Lots to talk about today. As I said to Mike, I'm going to struggle today with my language. I mean, they're just... I think we're all equally appalled. We're all equally appalled. Who can't be appalled by the awful Southport attack? And I think most of us, people who've been paying attention, are pretty darn horrified by what appears to have been a quite clear cover-up that went on last summer, labelling of everybody as far right, who's apparently passing disinformation and misinformation online. And now we're getting in more information after that guilty plea from Axel Rudakubana to the killing of 3 children and the attempted murder of 8 others and 2 adults, and all of the other charges as well. And the solution the government has come up with is, I mean, it's brilliant. We're going to change the definition of terrorism. Yeah, brilliant. And we're going to bring in 2-factor authentication that someone is 18, so a 17-year-old can't buy a knife. That is literally their solution to the problem. The fact that Axel Rudakubana admitted to carrying a knife on 10 occasions, had been caught with a knife at school before, was he expelled for that? The fact that he bought a knife on Amazon at the age of 17, it's a disgrace, according to Vecchio. It is just absolute disgrace. Well, given that he turned 18 just 9 days after the horrific murders that he committed, he could have just waited a few more days. We could have just seen the same attack a few days later. Is that really the solution to the problem? Is this not the main issue with this government? They will always look for any answers that aren't the real answers. They will always treat to blame anyone and everyone and everything they possibly can, other than the big elephant in the room. Is there an awful lot of people in this country who are mad or bad or both, and who are dangerous, who are known to the authorities? I don't care whether they've come over here on a Channel migrant boat, they've come here legally, whether they've born here, whether their parents were born here. I don't care. I don't want those people on the streets anymore. I don't want any more children killed. Is that too much to ask from my government? That's kind of pretty much basic government 101, isn't it? Don't tell us what kind of car we can drive, but then don't keep our children safe when they're at a Taylor Swift themed dance class in the summer holidays, because you aren't on top of the basic job of a government. Protect our borders, number 1. Number 2, law and order in this country. It's just not too much to ask. Yes, people will slip through. There will be lone people. There will be crimes. There will be terrorist attacks. There will be mad, bad and criminals. I get that. But when someone is known to you, when the social workers won't go to his house and he's been expelled from school because they need to have police with them by their side, is that not a clue? When his parents are so desperate they don't want him to go back to his old school on the final day of school because they're worried he's going to attack people like he did the last time, and they managed to persuade the taxi driver not to take him, do you not think that would be a time to act? We have got to get a grip. We have got to get a grip in this country. There is just far too much concern for people's rights, concern about people. We're constantly told that, we have to do this or that online or wherever to keep people safe. But none of the stuff that will actually keep people safe is done. So stopping a 17 and almost 18-year-old from buying a knife, or redesignating terrorism as involving young loners and incels and losers on the internet in their bedrooms, is not going to prevent another massacre of our children. It's just not. You have to take those people out of society. It is just that simple. And that's the one thing you won't do. But my God, if he'd written a hurty tweet or misgendered somebody, well, they'd have dealt with it then, wouldn't they? Well, that's what I have to say. I'm quite angry. I'm sure you're pretty angry as well about what we've been told in the last couple of days. And I do want to hear from you. We're going to be talking about all of this today. Axel Rudakubana admitting to carrying a knife over 10 times before those awful murders, still able to buy a blade from Amazon to use in the Southport attack last July. Home Secretary said, as I said, it was a total disgrace that the 17-year-old with a violent conviction already was able to order the knife online. She's going to bring in 2-factor authentication. I mean, deep sighs, everybody. Massive question still over whether was there a cover-up, or was the Prime Minister able to tell us an awful lot more, the police and the CPS, about Axel Rudakubana and his background before he went to trial, before we had his guilty plea? The answer to that is quite simply yes. And we're also going to be talking, as Mike was just now, about the Chancellor Rachel Reeves flying to Davos amid new warnings of a flattening UK economy, concern over the death spiral from investors. This, by the way, as America is about to Boom. We're going to be talking particularly about the energy policy later in the show. All that coming up. Delighted to say I've got Claire Pearsall here, former Conservative Special Advisor in the Home Office, no less, joining us. I'm going to take a moment. Breathe. I don't know. Apparently, it doesn't feel the same way about this stuff. I really don't. Look, you've got a teenage son. You know, you need to be worried about this stuff. Boys actually are more at risk than girls on the streets now from these lunatics. Only this morning we've learned a 14-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of murdering a 12-year-old boy in Birmingham in broad daylight yesterday. This stuff is not normal. No. This is not normal. It must not be normal. We must not normalise it. It can't just be a news and brief. Stuff is going on. Is the answer, as our brilliant Home Secretary has now announced, two-factor authentication to buy a knife online to prove that you're not under 18?
No, of course it's not the answer. I don't think anybody thinks it's the answer. It's utterly ridiculous that you can blame an online retailer for the problems that were elsewhere.
You know what we need? We need ID. That's what we need. We need personal ID. It always comes down to that. Digital ID.
I mean, I bought an electric bread knife for my husband. I'm a romantic for his birthday last year.
Valentine's, yeah.
And I bought it from Amazon, and I had to show some ID at the door when the Amazon driver delivered. Now, my Amazon account and my ID are in two different names. Didn't spot that at all.
But he did look at you and think, do you look like you're about to go on a knife rampage?
Yeah,
I'm
I really didn't. I
don't think they'd give it to me, but, you know.
I obviously looked
John
pretty
Lewis
good.
won't let you buy them online. I'm buying a whole load of kitchen stuff. I mean, they've got my details. I'm registered. And even if it's, OK, I'll collect it in store. Like, no.
And you can't do it, but then I could buy quite the danger bread knife that we have at home. I can buy that online.
Until very recently, I think you could buy a large machete as long as it didn't have something written on it. I mean, that's how mad this is.
But we've been through this before with knife crime crackdowns.
Yep.
June, July, September. That's just from the Labour government
Well,
themselves.
that's why all the knives have gone from our streets. Didn't you notice? Don't you feel so much safer?
No, I'm just missed that moment.
Look, I mean, they announce these things, so I assume they work.
Yeah.
What about the redefinition of terrorism? Possibly, they're looking at that.
Doesn't need to be looked at again, does it? Terrorism, the act of terrorism hasn't changed. It really hasn't. Terrorism itself hasn't changed.
I mean, terrorism and terrorising, these girls were terrorised.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's not an act of terrorism. Does it matter if he doesn't have, if Axel Rudakubana apparently did not have any particular one ideology? There's a rise of the incels, the sort of sad losers who can't get a girlfriend who just they're motivated by misogyny. They hate women. Women are all their problems. The Andrew Tates type people. And you've got the Al Qaeda people. You've got the far right people. You've got all of those people, and then you've got this guy. He had an Al Qaeda manual. He had a recipe to make ricin and had made some ricin, a poison used as a terror weapon, but not necessarily having any specific ideology other than just hate.
Yes.
Does it matter?
No, it doesn't. I think what matters.
Label we put on it?
No, it doesn't. But it matters what is done about it. And I think that prevent has never really been fit for purpose. It hasn't achieved what it was set out to achieve. And the people that are being referred into it then just get lost in a black hole. You don't need to redefine what terrorism is. What you actually need to do is maybe extend what is considered to be a threat, fixated on violence, for example, like this character has been. Then you need to look at how you actually deal with those things. Yeah. But the act of terror itself is still the same.
Exactly, and a lot of it comes down to resources, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, we've had numerous terror attacks, actual terror attacks inspired by terrorist ideology. Largely, by the way, let's all stop the nonsense. Largely in this country, it is Islamist. Yeah. America, it's far right. In here, it's Islamist is our main issue in terms of mass deaths. And lots of these people, again, they've been followed, they've been known, they've been, investigated. There aren't enough resources to follow all sort of, 30,000 people that could possibly commit an attack tomorrow. So they're not followed. It's a numbers game. Well, it doesn't. Let's stop messing about with these sort of definitions. It is extraordinary, I think. The Prime Minister, though, still standing by this idea that he was, unable, hand-wringing press conference yesterday. I don't think it's done him much favours at all. It really did not did not pass muster with our audience at all yesterday, and not judging by the front pages, it didn't either. But this idea that, look, he would have liked to pass on more message about the suspect and the killing in Southport, but he was not allowed to. It would have prejudiced the trial. That would have been an awful thing. We now the Merseyside police are saying, oh well, we were basically gagged by the CPS. The CPS, and of course, no. Crown Prosecution Service, would obviously make statements about this, and everyone wanted to be, want to be very careful. But the rules seem to have changed. I want to just hold up a picture here. This is the Sun newspaper from a good few years ago, 2016. Nazi mania of Joe killer. This is about about Thomas Mayer, the man who murdered Joe Cox at Labour MP in the middle of the EU referendum campaign. Nazi mania of Joe Killer. It details at great length his secret hoard of Nazi memorabilia, pretty much every book he's ever bought online. Talked about him having a history of mental health, all of that. Now, you'd think, given that she was sadly shot and stabbed, a horrific murder on June the 16th, this obviously was a front page from November when the trial happened. Nope. June the 18th. Yeah. 2 days later. By the way, it wasn't just the Sun. The Mail did stuff like that. It covered this. The Guardian, other newspapers as well. Go back to 2017, Parsons Green tube attack. The London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, confirmed in 2017 that it was a terror incident, on the day. Used the word terror. Again, not allowed to use the word terror, apparently, because, you don't want to prejudice the trial. This time around, Finsbury Park Mosque in 2017, Darren Osborne, that was classed as a terror attack within hours before he was even charged by the authorities. And guess who tweeted about it, calling it a terrorist attack?
Go on.
Keir Starmer.
No.
Keir Starmer, a shadow Brexit secretary. And the thing is, the rules seem to be different depending on who the suspect is. The rules seem to have changed. There is no reason why this information couldn't have been given out, and why we had that vacuum of information that was then filled by, yes, far-right degenerates trying to stir stuff up. And we know a lot of that started abroad. There were lots of people trying to stir stuff up, Russia, China, around everywhere. And that was allowed to happen. I mean, this is just a level of abject incompetence. And as always, they just blame everybody else.
Well, they are, and you'll know better than most about contempt. You've covered enough stories in your time.
I do have contempt, yes.
You do have contempt, but you've covered enough stories in your time to know what you can and can't broadcast. So why is it so different?
I had to tweet and issued a warning the morning of the trial to say, please, don't derail this trial. Don't tweet stuff like, he's obviously guilty. Yeah, you can't say that publicly.
Exactly, but why couldn't we know of those details? I mean, the Prime Minister would have known about the evidence of ricin being found and the training manual. He would have known that immediately.
The ricin was confirmed in early August. They found that on day one.
Yes, yeah, and the Prime Minister would have known. So to say that he only found out later doesn't ring true.
Charges not brought to the end of October.
Yeah, but I don't see how any of this would have prejudiced anything going on.
Yeah, exactly.
How?
Well, if you're prejudicing by the fact that these charges have been brought, then won't that prejudice the jury?
Precisely.
None of it adds up. It just simply doesn't add up, and it is, again, they think we're stupid. They think we're nasty and horrible and bigoted and racist.
That's more like
and they think we're stupid. That's a bad combination for democratically elected politicians.
Yeah, sure.
You really shouldn't despise the people that you represent. The biggest problem in this country is not being worried about being in contempt of court. I very much strongly endorse those laws, those rules that mean that we can have a fair trial. I don't like the American laws where you can go, yeah, he's guilty on it. I don't like that. I think it's the system, and I think it's a system that works. It's been abused in this case. But the problem is not contempt of court in this country. The problem is contempt of politicians for their voters. The contempt that this government, and I think the CPS, and I think senior police officers hold for us, the general public. Yeah. I think that's the issue.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I mean, how are we ever going to believe a word that is said about any other crime that happens, because everyone's going to be looking for what is being covered up at the meantime.
And how many times in cases, and we know in Britain and across Europe as well, have we been told within hours of an attack and someone being arrested, he's got long-standing mental health problems. Oh, it's always a mental health problem. Now, I'm kind of the view that if you're really, really into, Al-Qaeda or ISIS or any other mad Islamist group, and you're committing a terror attack, I think you are mad. I think it is a form of madness, but you can still be bad as well, but there we are.